What the fuck is this?
Trick or treat.
Oh, hell no! There's no fucking way! Coming to my house, begging like a bitch. Dressed up like a muppet, I'm about to lose my shit.
I am taking stock of the various issues on the B01 here. Get an idea of what happened here. The creator may not have been the one who got the file, but this file is ripped right from the video games. It wasn't designed firstly as a real world object, and that's what these gaps are. And that's what's happened here. You can see gaps on the other side because in the game, in the game this is all one piece and it's going to float there and it doesn't matter, but in real life those gaps prevent it from printing correctly or from seaming up, and that's why he taped it, because it wasn't holding properly. I can even see here, see this white, that's super glue, a really thin super glue that he attempted to start, and then I guess decided it was too much work, too much time, or it wasn't going to work on these gaps, because it really wouldn't. You're going to have to plug those up with proper material, which I'm going to do. So rather than go through all that, he taped it up. This here is, this is printed here. This is from support material that he just didn't clean up. You can reduce this by increasing the wall thickness. This feels like about 3 walls. This is just settings. You can fix this with settings, like 1 or 2. And even if you don't, you can just sand it smooth, which again, I'm going to fix that too. Here, this is where his print was beginning to fail. And he just let it go. He didn't notice. And that's again because this wasn't designed to be... You can make modifications to make this printable just fine, and there are plenty of helmets that do that. You see this coloring here on the edge? That's glue that ran down. That would be glue he had put up probably here to seal it in, and then set it at this angle so it would dry, and then it ran down and followed the contours. He didn't even sand it off, he just painted over it. That would sand off in less than a minute. These are decals. I'm going to try and pull those off. If not, I can paint that. This is not so bad. This is another decal, probably because he printed out a template, but he didn't get one for that, so he just vinyled it. Back here it looks like he just forgot to paint, but that's just a number of those issues. This is it's a pain to clean out, but it's not impossible, or it doesn't take long. You can just, you know, get a knife in there, and sufficiently sharp knife, and scrape it out. Doesn't take long. But I guess when you're filling mass orders, people, doesn't matter. So we'll get all that worked out. Now, a little, I guess they're speaker grills. Glued in, not a problem. However, you should not try to glue on top of your paint, because then you're just relying on the strength of that coat of paint, which isn't really that much, honestly. But yes, this is cyanoacrylate super glue. They printed on a textured PEI sheet. I don't know if that's coming through. Too close, probably. I know, yeah, it's a textured PEI sheet, which makes it easier to for your parts to stick on the sheet better. But they're squishing all their layers together. They need to adjust their Z height. their shit's crushed. That's why it's ooze on the side. Anyway, pop those out. I guess those are probably glued in there too. Let's see. Let's take our Camillus. What do you know? Pop. Pop, pop. Okay. Same deal there. It's even twice as bad actually because they glued on top of this paint and that paint. So you were just depending on, I mean, it's not a real helmet, it's not going into battle, and I guess most people are just gonna set it down, but I just prefer to do things a little more secure. This looks like it's just painted in there. These little guys, they're the same color. I don't think they're glued in there. Yeah, because I can see the way it's fused on. Let's pop this baby out. I need a tripod so I can try hard. Stop wiggling. Stop wiggling. There. Look, we'll do this. Go in. It's down there. So you can yeah, monkey foot it. There. Okay. This looks like it's printed and it's part of it. I think the rest of that is one piece, technically. You know, there's major gaps twixt all these parts. Alright. Well, so that will make painting it easier. That's single. That'll make painting easier because trying to get in there and paint all those is going to be a pain. Okay, so here's our accoutrement. We're going to go over here with those guys. They'll get dealt with separately. These are I'm going to get confirmation on what these are for. I'm going to dig into the lore and I'm going to find out what these are for. And then I'll treat them, paint them appropriately. But in the meantime, we gotta get these striations. You hear it's kind of like a zipper. You don't want that. You don't want that. You don't want to see that. It doesn't look good. Smooth it out, bro. See here? They didn't use adaptive slicing. All the layers are the same height, so it reaches this height. And then if you use adaptive slicing, when you get a part like this where it's coming up to the part of a point or something rounded, it will gradually make these layer lines thinner as it gets to the top, so you don't get this kind of stair step pattern. It's far less noticeable and it's much easier to deal with. This is going to be a real bitch to take care of. I'm going to have to put several layers of filler primer just to smooth it out because of the way it stands out. Adaptive slicing adds maybe not even 1% to your total printing time, so it doesn't surprise me with all the other shortcuts they took here. But I can take care of it. I've fucked up prints worse than this and been able to make them look really good. So now I've cleaned up again all my clips with, so I gotta review. I've cleaned out a lot of this interface, and as I've done so, let's see if I can get the right angle here. Anyway, yeah, see that hole? The majority of this, since it's filed from the game, this is not actually connected because it doesn't need to be. They just programmed all these pieces to sit together. They don't have to touch. They could be a mile away. It's videos. But in real life, they don't touch. It's a problem. So, because they didn't stitch the file up, when you try to print it, now there is a piece here, this kind of a mouth guard. It's connecting like this frame with this piece, and that's really the only reason these are staying together. That's also why there was tape on the inside. Now, a knock-on effect. You see how rough this is? I wonder how close I can get. Not very. See how rough all of that is? That's because as it was trying to print this part, there was nothing connecting these, so it started printing in the middle of the air. That caused it to deform, giving you this rough shape, and had the knock-on effect of, because the print wasn't as high as it needed to be, off by fractions of a millimeter. But you see these thick lines here, like right there. Going further up, it happens more and more. That's all because of that. Small problems early on, because of the nature of 3D printing, can compound later. Now in this case, it didn't do so much that it destroyed the whole part, but it can. And depending on your printer setup, if you try to run that the way it is, because it's like that all the way around. Depending on your kind of printer, if you try to do that, it can fail mid-print, and you can come back after you've got up to here and the rest of this is gone. So it's really a good idea. Most slicers will tell you if your object isn't what they call it watertight. Most printer slicers, when you feed it in, it'll tell you this isn't going to print correctly. Now it'll let you bypass it, but there's a button that you can click on most of these slicers that'll fix that for you. See, this is a big one right there. Look at that. It's at least 4 millimeters. Anyway, none of it's non-fixable. I'm just, as I go on picking this apart, I'm seeing all the mistakes that are made. Probably just corners cut. Now, I don't know the orientation they had on their print bed, but I can tell you their print bed is not square, and here's why. So if we come to this side of our helmet, this junction here, it's on there good and solid. It's not moving. I can't flex it. And looking here, it's like a solid piece. But if we flip over to its counterpart on the other side, look at that. It's not only is it not attached, it was at some point, because you can see where the plastic kind of tried to melt together. So their print bed's not square either, which if your print bed is not square, your print's going to come out warped, which that's kind of self-explanatory. It's actually reflecting over here now that I'm aware of the problem. So our loose parts over here, can we see? Now I've only dragged sandpaper one swipe downward, so that's what that scratching is. Ignore the middle. Do you see the texture on this side of the helmet compared to that side? They're both pretty bad, but this one is a lot smoother than over here. See how the blistering and how it's kind of poking out a bit compared to that? It's because it's not square. Extreme cases, you're really going to notice it. This one is probably off by about a degree, because this still did fuse for a little bit before releasing. So it's probably off by 1.5 degrees. You can fix that in 30 seconds if you have the tools. But I mean, with all the other shortcuts that probably didn't even occur to them, I would have immediately performed printer maintenance, because if you continue printing with a not square bed, you're putting additional wear on your parts and reducing the lifespan of your printer. So I hope they get that fixed before it breaks. They'll have to use some of their profits from selling these helmets. They'll have to dip into the fund. Now, our visor plastic is quite clearly hand cut. It's not even straight. And this, I can tell, is where he tried to super glue it in here, and it didn't work out the way you'd hoped, because contrary to popular belief, super glue doesn't work on everything. That's what this white here is, and that's what all this texture is. He tried to super glue it and it didn't work, and then he tried to scrape the glue off or pull it off here, and it just ripped. So he used painter's tape, which is not even the best tape to use for this. There are better glues you can use for this. Super glue I wouldn't count. Oh, I didn't turn this over. Oh, this gets even better. Hold up. Check it out. Okay, we got our tape off. This isn't tinted plastic. This is window tinting, like you use on your car, over some just plastic, probably the packaging for that. So he didn't even get tinted plastic. He got just some window film that you could use for your car. I mean, I've done stuff like that before, but I never did it to sell to somebody. Especially when you can buy tinted acrylic. It's already tinted what you need, and you know, you can cut it out with a knife and then take even a hair dryer and get it hot and melt it in. And this isn't even like, you know, you've seen some helmets in sci-fi where shaped, you know, that you're going to need a special press, but this is just curved. See, this is curved in here, so that's not really that difficult or expensive. This is 2 sheets of 3/8 tinted acrylic, and it was $10. You could get 2 out of that. Out of each sheet, you get 4 out of that. So $2.50, and maybe an hour of time. Maybe. This, because, you know, he cut it, and then it doesn't cling to this very good. It's not made for that. It's made for glass. So, and when he bent it into place, it started to bubble and come up. So he tried to glue it on. That he waited. I can even see the residue. He weighed it in place, but you see how there's pretty much no glue residue on that, because super glue is not going to stick to that. And if it does, the second you bend it, pops right off. So he probably spent a good couple of hours trying to make that work. Piece of garbage. We'll do better. That is a big B. It's a little gray today. Hey, Coop. So we've got sanded fairly smooth. The ridge here, we've actually smoothed down. So there's less of that stair step. Once I've added the filler primer and sanded it again, you won't even see that. So it'll look proper. But I've taken and removed a lot of the uneven levels or layers and the blemishes. We're gonna give it a wipe down tomorrow and then another spot sanding. But most of this, because there's still some areas that are not smooth, but the filler primer will get that. So we are on our next day here. We're gonna start filling in these cracks so we can see through there. Now I don't want to completely fill this ridge in because that is a part of the texture. So what we're gonna do, we have baking soda here, we have water in a tiny syrup bottle here, and I've made a paste because we're going to do our super gluing method here with our cyanoacrylate super glue. What you do is just make a paste as dry as you can so that it still stays together when, like, you say you clump it up like that, because you're going to stuff it into those cracks and then you're going to smooth it with I'm going to use one of my pointy bits here, let it dry, and then we're going to dribble our glue down in there. But you don't want this too loose because it's going to take a lot longer to dry and it's going to run, and you don't want it so dry that it just becomes a powder. So it only takes a few drops. So I suggest when you do this, you get yourself a little powder of your baking powder and then just add 2-3 drops and start mixing it together. It's kind of like a dough almost. But basically kind of that consistency. It's going to hold together, and if it's too dry, you just add another drop and mush it around. So we have our cyanoacrylate super glue in our seams all around the helmet. And the next step after it's dried is to take your glue and just carefully dribble it down. It will absorb right in just like the water does. Now, do this carefully because once it touches that baking soda and soaks in, it's going to harden very, very, very quick. So quick that it will often produce a lot of heat. So be careful if you're doing this over large areas, and make sure you have plenty of airflow. As we can see, essentially outside, and there's a storm coming. So you do that, you're gonna let it just get all the way down, just like that. Now keep a paper towel on hand in case you get any drips or miss anything. Keep in mind, super glue will also harden very quickly in a paper towel and can also cause it to smoke if too much gets on it. Be careful out there, folks. Let's see, I missed a spot. Now, once you've done this, you can, depending on how much you've put on, you can sand that pretty well. Now, it doesn't go in super deep because it tends to cure before it goes deep. But if you have, say for instance, if this was a hole that shouldn't have been there and I filled it in with this, I could sand it glass smooth. And you can do that too. So we're gonna do this all the way around. Let it dry. Also, sometimes there might be a little left on top that didn't reach the baking soda. You can just blot it real quick. Don't press and hold, because then it'll cure and tear. Smack it. And you yank it. Now we have our glue in place on our baking soda, and as we can see, it's not coming up. So this is now a whole piece It's not being held together by just a few misplaced pieces of plastic or tape. And now that that's in place, we can begin painting and filling. See how those lines just disappear, get filled in. So you use this stuff to layer it in. It's not like regular paint. It's got like kind of like a clay paste inside that sands quite easily when you dry it, when it's dry. So when you have little cracks and lines and imperfections like this guy had, you just kind of liberally put this on, let it dry, and then you can sand it smooth. It comes out really, really nice. And it takes further paint on top of that. Look here, you see that? Watch this. And then that dries, it'll level itself out, and then that comes off really easy. So if you have a problem area like what we had up here, you can just kind of pile it up and it'll all sand off really easily. Regular paint won't do this. So if you're trying to cover striations, layer lines with regular spray paint, not gonna work. It's actually just gonna highlight those striations. And then you're gonna have to sand those off. And sanding spray paint is really gummy, tends to gunk up sandpaper, or if you're using a file. So it's a lot easier to just go this route, and then you paint on top of it. That's how I do all mine. We'll do another couple of coats of that to make sure it's even, and then let it dry, which this dries faster than paint too, and then give it another sanding. It's like a clone trooper now, huh? We are complete with our sanding. There we go. Just natural light will let us see how smooth it is. So reflecting the light. Now, let's just kind of yeah. So we can see that unpleasantness up here is disappeared. There's a shadow of it here, and that actually, you can't even feel it. So once, there'll be 2 other layers of paint, plus textures on top of that, completely gone. You can see a little shadow of it here and there, but it's gone. We have pre-engineered a few defects, such as this area here. We're going to put some gunk, maybe some rust, dirt, blut, mein blut. Back here is actually going to be primed because this was silver. It's like a connection port. I'll be able to put some good rust on here, some other gunk. See, we've got our, there's no more light. You can't see through it anymore. We've sealed her up. And we haven't done our visor yet. I'm waiting until we've painted everything so everything is in place. And then our little guys here, these will be hand painted. I usually do pours on this so that we get a smooth appearance, not that nastiness there. I can cover that up quite easily. Same with these little, I don't know what these are. These are cool. From their placement in the helmet, I take it it's a way to like take the helmet apart IRL, because there's little hinges there too. So I take it you just flip those and maybe it comes apart. I don't know. I didn't look into that deep into the lore. Once that's done, we'll put our lining that has a spider on it. Is it gone? You can keep the spider. It's a part of the environment, so you can have him. We got our black here. Now you'll notice I don't go for metallic black, because metallic black is just black with some glitter in it, so that it, you know, shines. I prefer instead to do a base coat of our metallic silver here, which is actually coming up next. Once that dries, the black goes over top of it, and just 1 or 2 layers, the silver will shine through. Plus, if you give it just a good once over with a fine grit, that'll especially bring out that. And if you do it in the right areas, people won't even be able to tell that it's not metal. Now, I tend to stick with a 220 grit for our finishing here on our sandable primer. They call that ultra fine. I wouldn't, because it catches my fingers. When we're removing large amounts like I had to do up here, we have an 80 grit. Those are my 2 standards. If I'm going for a weathered look when I'm done, which this will. If it was just going to be a pristine helmet, I'd probably bump from the 220 to maybe even a 500. But this one, I don't have to go that far. Fortunately, it's a lot less work. So now we are going to retrieve Garage Cat. We're going to spray paint him. No. I am going to open the door. Hubert will keep you company while I do this one-handed. See, we squat. Thank you, sir. So, today we're going to put our black coat on. As we see, we've done a few touch-ups. We've hit a few of our, I almost said injury, defects. Gone over them with a silver pen, because it's going to be covered anyway. And I didn't want to spray it, so for touch-ups I usually go for silver paint pen. Look who's here. You coming up? What up, bud? Alright. Now, it's a good day, so to speak, for the painting, because it's windy and sunny, but the temperature when it's a full-on sun is a bit high. And if this were to sit too long, it would begin to warp and buckle. So what we're going to do is we're going to paint it out there and then just kind of wheel it in here so it's not getting direct sunlight. And while that dries, I've got yard work to do. How do you like that? Bradley. 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 Good kitten. Yes, baby. Yoda. Ahora. So, for reference, I used the same spray paint that the previous artist used. Same brand, same shade, same texture. Do you see how much better this looks? And this is just one coat. I haven't done anything else to it, and I just laid it on. Look at it. You remember that nasty crown? The stair step? It's not there anymore. It's not just paint. It's about the care you take before applying it. Now, it's not going to look like this when we're done. I'm going to rough it up. But, see, you can't just spray these things. You got to take a little prep work first, because it looks really good. By the way, do you like my rolly cart? I call it the Roll-O-Mat 5000. It's made of bits of scrap material I've accrued over the years. You know, it's pretty jank and something. I need to fix that. But this is just an old milk cart, and then has some wood paneling in there, and then I bolted this old stool legs to it, and I use it when I'm doing a project, and I'll load it up with tools, and it rolls where I need to go. In this case, I put the lid on it, and it's a rolling spray paint cart, so I can move it about. That happens when this is all junk. you can tell. Eventually, it accrues to the point where I can make something, or I'd finally decide it's no good and get rid of it. We have reached the time for the yellowing, the great yellowing. Now, this is we're going to do the same method I did with the eruptor rifle, wherein I have glued some paper strips down with a glue stick. This one, and it's to mask off the areas. What we're doing now to get it to lay straight and smooth is we're going to take some warm water and just wet it, lay it back down. That's a water-soluble glue, so the warm water will both soften our paper and re-wet the glue so it sticks better. When that's done, I can yellow these areas, and the rest of this we're going to mask off probably with a bag as well as that, because I can't begin further distressing to have the yellow on there, and maybe even the visor. We'll see. But today, while at work, we're going to put in the work. Still like how smooth that is. Look at it. Good stuff. Doesn't even indent. Good. Good. Very good. Yes. Whoa. Wonder if that picked up on camera. That was weird. Anywho, now we are nice and wetted. We can ensure we've got a good, smooth seam. Now, we're really only worried about the lines on the inside here. Out here, it's not going to be yellowed, and it's not going to be paint. So this is the only lines that matter. I don't need to shape that. What we're going to do is take Sliso here and just, I'm not going to do this on camera because it's precision, but it's wet, so it will be much easier to just slice away any extra portions without damaging the paint. Anywho, I don't want to do that one-handed. I need both hands. We're cleaning up previous manufacturer defects and leftover glue on our accoutrement. They didn't get in on our corners here. Let's see if I can get a. Probably not going to work because how shiny it is. They didn't do any like corner or edge work, you know, so it's kind of messed up looking in areas. Of course, I'm sanding, so it just looks like painted plastic to me. I'm going to try and remedy that. We're going to clean that up. And our speaker grills, same thing. Looks junk. we're going to get the details. Little extra detail work on there. Clean up this leftover glue. That is super glue, I can tell. But we'll do that while the helmet paper strips dry. And then we'll go from there. Now, on to our vents. Typically for something like this, an enclosed little space that is going to be one color, I would do what I call just a pour, wherein I take my paint, dribble a bit in there, and just kind of let gravity take care of it and then level it off. That gives you a nice, really smooth effect and covers up these striations so you don't need to sand it. I'm not going to do that this time because I found some of this really old speaker mesh. You see it's already rusty and kind of beat up. So I'm going to cut little strips out and fit it in there like so, just to give it more of an air of realism. What up, Minty? Can I help you? The window's occupied. Goodbye. You're yellow. So today on the docket we have our stripe on either side. We want to remove our masking. This is a little bit trash bag. We've got some gaffer's tape, and then this is our paper with the glue on it. Now what I had done is coated both sides with that water-soluble glue in the hopes that by giving this a good soak in some water, it'll loosen up and just pull away from the part without affecting the paint. If it does, I can work around it, but you know, when you're taping, like taping off a part that's already been painted, it can be kind of tricky because if it doesn't stick enough, obviously it's going to come off. If it sticks too much, it's going to pull your layer of paint off. It can also leave adhesive marks, which may not be advisable. So I tend to stick with obviously painter's tape and gaffer's tape because those are made to release. And they tend to release cleanly. I rarely have a problem with adhesives coming off of the tape. And when I do, they come right off. So we're going to give this a soak. And while that soaks, we're going to work on the accoutrement, our little bitties, and we're going to set our metal mesh into our vents. And then by then, hopefully we'll be able to get that off cleanly. And then from there, I think what I'm going to need to do is get our visor shaped so that I will know exactly what I've got to do to get that set in place. I got a few ideas, but let's get at it. I remember specifically being a little boy taking apart a toy stereo while listening to this song, just learning how it worked. Anyway, see if I can get a good shot of that. Look how look cool. Cool. How about that? It's like an IRL vent, right? And that's metal. That's a good look. I like it. I think I'll give a few scratches here and there, you know, to highlight the metal underneath. But we already have a nice rusty look going to it. And I gave it a good beating with a hammer and then a squeeze. I put the squeeze on it. That's what I did. So now we're going to go rip that wrap off of the helmet. That entails getting out of this chair. Hey bud, are you here to help? Let's see how this works. We've been soaked, so we're just going to take this government issue paper towel and I'll wipe him, just tilt him. Let's see how it goes. Yes. Look at that, right off. No marring. This is just a little adhesive from the glue and that'll come right off. Alright, so we just gotta proceed the rest of the way. How about you? You good? You good, G? You are. Okay. That was weird. Anyway, I'm gonna continue that, clean it up, and see how that turned out. We have turned down. Drop. So there we go. Now we did have some damage, but I had planned on that because of the type of finish this is going for anyway. So if I was going for something to be pristine and remain perfect, like say this part, and I wanted the yellow to be like that too, I would use a different masking method, probably one that didn't use any sort of adhesive or tape. I would have went with either a soap mask, which is really neat. You're just putting liquid soap where you don't want the paint to go, and then it all wipes off with the paint when you're done. Or I would have done the tape or the glue and paper method on the whole thing. Now, because this is about to get some sandpaper to it and made it look damaged, I wanted this sort of look anyway. So once we pour over that, we'll be set on the look. Now we're gonna go to our visor, because I've not done something on this level before, and I'm hoping it works the way I think it should. So we're gonna get to measuring, cutting, and applying heat to get that bent into the shape. So we need our visor to be curved. Now, I've already done a test with some scrap and my heat gun, so I know that's going to work. But I need it to be even and preferably without a bunch of extra wrinkles. So to that end, I've constructed this. Whoa, I'm gonna fall. It's got a bunch of sockets and stuff in there. Probably weighs about 5 pounds, and it's taped to each end of our acrylic, laying over this round Livingston bottle, which is a little bit bigger than your head. I'm going to take the heat gun and just keep applying pressure, and as that softens, the weight of that toolbox will just pull it down evenly, and then I'll leave it there to cool, and it'll be the shape that I need if this works properly. If not, I have another sheet that I can get 2 more out of if I'm careful. So let's set to it. Now that we have our visor material shaped, ready to go in place, our helmet can roll away. We've made some doesn't show up on camera, but they're there, I assure you. I've made some marks to trim the excess, which we will do with a rotary tool and a diamond bit steel disc. We're just going to trim off a little of the extra. Once we've done that, I'm going to put a few pilot holes in there and get some short screws that will drill into the material and hold that, so we don't have to rely on glues, which can degrade over time. I prefer to use mechanical means wherever possible ahead of glues, or at least to supplement the two if possible. For something this big, I would not want to just do glue, much less blue painter's tape. So, there we go, that's showing up. That little dash is the nose. But there you go. We can see through it. So let's get a cutting. Here we are. Just a few quick cuts with acrylic. You don't even have to go all the way through when you're cutting it. You just really need to score it, and then you can snap it off, and that will give you a clean edge where you see up top how it's a little fuzzy. If you cut all the way through, you run the risk of creating flashing that you need to remove later. I accidentally went all the way through there, so I just need to smooth that out. Fortunately, that's going to be away from the eyes. So now that that is cut into shape, I'm going to drill, I think we probably want to go with 3 holes, one on each end and then in the middle there, so it doesn't move. I've engineered it so that there is a bit of a gap between the nose and the body of the helmet, to try and, you know, let out breath, since the actual helmets, these would function as intended, but this is cosplay, so the times you want to put it on, hopefully that'll help. So it's not going to be, you know, a solid connection, but it doesn't need to be. So let's get to planning. The key is to find screws long enough to go through that material and into this without going all the way through, while also still gripping it. I should have stuff that'll work for that. If it winds up going through, you know, we'll work with it. We'll trim it down and make it just look like damage. That's the fun part about these textures. It makes it easy to hide mistakes, which I make a ton. We're just searching through the random fastener drawer, looking for 3 screws that fit the profile. I found 2. Look at it. Look at it. It's pointed and just long enough to go through our focus. To go through our visor material and into the helmet without going all the way through. Now, the question is that going to grip enough? It might not have enough grip. We're going to see, though. We got to find a 3rd one. It's somewhere in there. See, anytime I have a screw that's like it's come from something, or I've taken it out of an appliance, I throw it in here. I don't throw it away. I'll eventually find a use for it. Hey, that's an oldie. What's that? So we've got our 3. Now, next job is to find a drill bit that's not too big for those, but not so small that they have to be forced through, which can crack the material. Ill-advised. So, similar to the random fastener drawer, I also have a random bits drawer. Now, I tend to keep things like that in their holders. That's in there because I'm using it. But for ones that don't have their own or attachments for rotary tools, they go in this bucket. You know, these are old grinding discs. We got medium size, big fella. This is for sharpening blades. It's not that great. This might be it. What do we think? It's a little small, but if that is all we have, I can work with it. We'll wiggle it about. What about, we got a gold tip titanium. I think that's the same size. It's smaller actually. No, NG. Let's give it the old shake. That might be all I've got. It's another gold tip. Yeah, what? Very stupid. Hey, I think that can do it. It's bigger than that. What do we got? Yeah, because see, these are gonna go through here and screw into that, so it's gonna kind of pull the visor into that, so it doesn't necessarily need to thread into that. So it can be bigger than that. The threads here, the hole can, and I think that's just about as big. We need to clean our threads off though. It looks like these got some drywall on them. So we'll just take a blade, scrape that out so that it can get a good purchase into that. We're gonna drill a smaller hole than this. We'll use that into that so that these threads bite into this material, and hopefully that works. Given that this isn't going to be a part that needs to be removed again, ideally, it should be fine. I don't want to glue this. I'm not going to glue this. If I have to drill all the way through, bolt it, and then putty it in, I'll do that, but I'm not going to glue that. Now that we have all our external accoutrement installed and the painting base done, it's time to start roughing her up. Now, I want to start with big. I want kind of a centerpiece, so to speak, a bit of damage, as requested by the client. We want a big kind of a score, like a shot that maybe just skimmed or ricocheted. Again, left-handed user, so we're gonna kind of play this as if they were, you know, maybe taking aim. Someone tried to shoot them and their aim was a little bit off. So to do that, we're gonna take this inanimate carbon rod and get it heated up really well, and just kind of, that way we'll have a nice long streak there. And then work on the point of impact. We might just kind of stab it so that it's got a pit. And then from there we'll fill it in with some metal, some black. I've got some carbon black around here, right there in that jar. So, and then from there, some general sanding around our edges to make the metal stand out. We've done a bit there. My yellow is different color, so I need to account for that in storyline. I didn't feel like taping it and spraying it again, and I didn't want to go through the process, the whole extract for paint. You can do that with spray paint. It's just kind of a bitch. So now to superheat our rod. In rod we trust. It's an old knife sharpener. We have achieved our gouge. Now you could do this with, you know, something like that if you want, but I prefer to do this the heated metal when working with plastic, because it gives you this kind of piling effect along the edges, which is kind of what would happen to actual metal when heated or hit with some plasma or lasers or whatever. So we get that piling, and then we give it like a silver treatment. But first, what we're going to do is sand this away, because the idea being a superheated bolt of something hit here, which then sprayed over that way, because we see it deflected off the helmet. So we'll strip some of that paint down to the metal, maybe scar it a little with our carbon black peeking out over there, and see where we go. We have done our weathering. Weather. There's our slap. I might do a little more on that, but you know, there's our slag shot. Sanded it and worn it in key areas. Got metal coming through. So now it's time to upholster, which is one of the 5 original industrial arts. So I'm going to quilt up an interior for this. And since this is all internal work, I can do it inside whilst watching anime. Voila! So this is now complete. Let's move it to the stove. Give this a tour of the island, so to speak. We'll show you what we've done. So first off, obviously, we stripped the old paint off, put several coats of filler and new paint in, and then weathered it at client's request to look as if it's been through several rounds of battle. Or as he said, 3 minutes of battle in Helldivers. I call this particular finish Malevolent Creek. Anyway, we preserved our original decals as they appear to be probably something like from a Cricut vinyl cut. I just stuck them back on, weathered those up. We had several layers of filler primer, which was applied liberally and then sanded smooth to get rid of all of the striations that we had seen on the previous work, including that disgusting, hideous stair step up that was up here, that pyramid, because they didn't use adaptive slicing. As we can now tell, there's no hint of that left. There. See how smooth that is? Next up, the visor. That horrible, disgusting visor was ripped out, thrown into the garbage. We then took some 3/8 acrylic, pre-tinted, because, you know, they do that. We stretched this and formed it into position with some heat, thanks to this here oven, set to 300 degrees, and an old Livingston wine bottle, which helped us to get that into shape. And that is screwed into place, not painter's tape, not glued. It's not going to come out. Well, you could probably take it in any case. So, we can see what we've done here. We have silver that sits on top of our filler primer, and then our metallic black, which is actually the same paint and the same texture that was on here before, but actually used properly. It only looks metal if you treat it as such. What we then did is took some variations of medium to fine grit sandpaper and rubbed it across at certain points to kind of get rid of the shininess, which some of that is still present because I just couldn't bring myself to completely destroy all of it the way it came out so well. So I try to preserve a good amount of that. But we then, in some areas, we took a bigger knife and just kind of ran it down. You want to kind of go at it sideways rather than all the way down, because if you go at it sideways with the point, you're going to drag a lot of your paint off and make it kind of fracture, flake, and break away, which is what you are going for there. If you cut as if you're actually cutting it, excuse me, that's just going to give you gouge marks, and the paint is just going to kind of like fold up a bit. It's not going to give you the look you want. And if you do it the way I'm describing, you only really need to take one pass. This decal, what I did was, after all of this was done, I laid it over top and then just cut some away. I think, nope, that's an illusion. I did really well with that. We did the same here. We also hit it with a jet lighter, quick pass over to give it a melty, weathered look. Let's turn her around. Now, client requested a kind of like a bing, bang, blah. So what we've done is we had taken a superheated inanimate carbon rod. First we gave it a poke to dig through and give a kind of a piling, and then I turned, as we can see, melted a little to give it some pile up, just wiggled it around, and then I took a couple swipes that way. Then I followed it up with a knife, both the way I described before, sideways, and also cut to go deeper. In some cases I went a little too deep, so we took a silver paint pen and filled in there. Now, if you just do that, you're not going to get these textures, these wonderful textures that you put in when you do these methods. Pull it back here. What you need is something to make that stand out. And what I use is my carbon black, just some very finely ground activated charcoal powder, which is my final product when I'm going for the weathered look. You just take and rub that over and just give it a few rubs. It's going to get into the little scratches and grooves you made with your sandpaper. You see how we have here? My skills suck at this. Can I turn my light on? Nope. I know what I'll do. I'll pause the video and then I'll come back with a light on. There we go. We've got some fresh lights here. There we go. Now, you see all our kind of sandpaper marks? Those would not be very visible unless you were this close. So what you want is some contrasting material. The very fine material of the carbon black is especially useful for that. We can tell how it's kind of come up here too, and you can vary how much you put on and you can even wipe it away afterwards. What up baby? And that excuse me, that will give you different looks. Here what we did is took our jet lighter, passed it over until our paint started to bubble, and then sprinkled our carbon black over top while it was cooling, which then trapped our carbon black and gave it a scoring look. So now instead of just looking like buffed metal, it kind of gives us like it melted away. Excuse me. Moving on. The previous model had some severe gap issues, especially between these two pieces. How far out? There we go. Because of the way that this model was ripped and was not prepared properly. So I had filled that in with some baking soda paste and cyanoacrylate super glue, which formed a hard acrylic layer, which we then sanded smooth, painted, and there's no more gaps. Anywhere I saw that issue, that is how I solved it. There was some of that over in these parts too. Next, our vents. These guys. These were just 3D printed and sprayed. They didn't have hardly any care put into them, and they kind of just look bad. So I had found some speaker mesh, some old steel speaker mesh that was already rusting and weathered looking and had cat hairs on it. So I cut that with some mega shears into these little grooves, set it in there, and then a couple drops of super glue, and mum's your uncle. I think that's how that's used. So I think that gives a greater overall look for the piece, even if it's not 100% accurate, especially at a distance. You know, I think that stands out. And then when you get closer, it just makes it really pop. Moving on. I didn't really do anything special to those except clean them up. They had just glue messily applied and didn't have 3D printing flashing removed. So I pulled those out of there and removed old glue that was very sloppily applied, cleaned it up and shoved those back in there. And moving inward, because we had a great deal of work inside the helmet. Previously, this was just a plain 3D printed shell, nothing inside, not even cleaned up inside. So because of the way 3D printing works, where it starts from the bottom up And we can see this has got a bit of a flatness to the top, so you would need support material inside to hold that in. Now, it doesn't appear that who printed this, they did very much of that, because the inside was very rough with overhangs and material just kind of globbing around. So rather than spend a ton of time trying to sand that out, I opted to just go ahead and put a liner in, along with something to actually make it sit on the head instead of, or actually make it, you wear it instead of this bucket just sitting atop your head. Previous client said it hurt them to wear because of how pointy and jagged all the plastic was. So clearly, he wants to occasionally wear it, which I don't blame him. So we have a liner from an old motorcycle helmet that I had laying around. I tore that out and we put that in. We lined it. Underneath here is a softer, kind of like a felt material that's a little thicker than this stuff, but not too thick, so it gives it a softness. Laying over top of our deep space fabric. You see that? Isn't that gorgeous? Because it's a spaceman helmet. But that's what you are. I happen to I have a lot of different fabrics from different projects. I thought that was the most applicable. These are scrap LED strings, which are covering some messy internals, which I thought, just, it gives it a nice look. Here's more of our mesh screening, some scrap pleather from kind of that guy, Mr. Satan title belt. It's left over from that. More of our LEDs here, and this is actually some of that material that's underneath that. It's soft and it's a nose pad, because I didn't want to install chin straps because I play the game and I don't see chin straps because of the nature of how this is designed. It also would have required me going through material. I didn't want to do all of that. So it indexes on the nose. When you put that in, that will sit on the nose. I did leave a gap between the helmet and our visor there. There, see my fingy? To let your breath out. And that seems to be doing really well. I've worn this several times and didn't have any fogging on our visor there. But, excuse me. So it will, if I had bent this any more, the helmet would still index on your nose and it would just tilt further. So I don't think the person getting this is going to be wearing it like out and about at cons for very long, if they do that at all. I think it's just a cool thing for them to have. But yeah, here it's actually really comfortable. I've done it several times. Just plop it on the head there. Let's see. Can I reverse this? What up, B? There's our helmet. Let's get under the light. It's not bad. You put it on and it goes right to eye level. So we got this set up really well, and that actually doesn't really hurt at all. It's a pretty good helmet. So, as I do say so myself. People, hotbox this shit before I give it to him. So cool.
Listen this, listen this.
Are you sure about that?